Hello everyone. Today our journey begins at Las Vegas Airport with Southwest, who will be taking us all the way through to Orlando, with a stop in New Orleans. Interestingly, this is one of Southwest's many flights, where the same aircraft will take us on both flights, meaning we won't have to change planes in New Orleans. But check-in for a flight like this was like any other, and we were issued with one boarding pass for both flights in no time. All the gates here were occupied when our inbound plane landed, so we were a bit delayed as it waited over there to park at the terminal. But we had a long journey ahead of us and plenty of time to make up some of the delay. After a little while our gate was displayed, so we headed over there along with our plane. Southwest are one of the few airlines which still have an open seating policy, where you were given a letter number sequence instead of a seat assignment. The A group were the first people to line up here, with these signs indicating where you should stand, which often leads to conversations like these.
Good. What number are you?
I'm
44? Yeah, I'm 42.
Like kindergarten all over again.
Despite completing online check-in right as it opened, I still ended up in the dreaded C boarding group, meaning there would be at least 120 people who would board before me. This has got to be one of the most stress-inducing situations, stepping on board wondering if you'll be stuck in the middle seat. But miraculously I grabbed what must have been the only window seat left on board, which was in the last row though, seat 30A. Another concern was that there also wouldn't be too much overhead bin space left either, especially considering this ended up being a completely full flight over to New Orleans. We must have made up at least 5 minutes at the rate that these Southwest pilots were taxiing at. But we were actually held up for a few more minutes on the runway as another passenger decided to get up and go to the toilet right as we were about to take off. The captain seemed very close to heading back to the terminal and offloading them, but they eventually returned to their seat and we finally took off without any more delays. Now that we're underway, the Southwest service began. The flight attendants came through and took our drink orders, and we could choose anything from this menu for free. or purchase something stronger if you wanted, as we're unfortunately still a few days off one of Southwest's free drink days. After delivering the drinks, they came by with a big snack basket and gave us the standard Southwest snack mix, as well as these biscuits. Normally you would only receive the snack mix, but as our flight was longer, we got this additional one too. Though I'm not quite sure exactly what their policy is, as on 2 other flights with them of similar length, no additional snack was offered. Now let's take a look around the seat on board this MAX 8. We're actually so far back on board we have a great view of the horizontal stabiliser. But back to the seats, there's a literature slot up the top with its usual things. Then continuing down, there's an average sized adjustable tray table, as well as a small seat back pocket which would only fit a few small items. But even with having the rest of your stuff at your feet, the legroom is still pretty good. One thing to note about these seats in the back row is that they don't recline. Although that's not too much of a problem on the relatively short flights this plane does at a time. It was kind of made up for though by the good padding of these seats and the strong adjustable headrest, which made getting comfortable not too difficult at all. The window alignment for this row is great for looking at the beautiful Southwest coloured winglet, although it was a bit annoying having the toilets directly behind our seats, as quite a few people would gather around at times. There was also one toilet up the front, but the 2 at the back were at least fairly standard 737 MAX toilets. They were a bit dirty by the time we reached New Orleans, but it's hard to see due to the strong mood lighting inside. Concerningly, someone got stuck inside the other one of the rear toilets for quite a while, but the flight attendants, who didn't seem fazed at all by this, as I heard this happens on these MAX toilets more than you'd like to think, eventually freed the stranded passenger. But after what hasn't felt like too long of a flight after all, we're beginning our descent and approach into New Orleans, not too far behind schedule. Once we landed, the passengers who were continuing on to Orlando were given these special instructions.
Please remain seated in your original seats, allowing our New Orleans customers to deplane. We'll come from the back to count you as a through passenger. Once we have our count, we'll make an announcement. You have plenty of time to stretch or use the lavatories. We certainly have enjoyed sharing part of our day with you. We know you have many choices when you fly. Thank you for choosing us here at Southwest. Once again, thank you and good afternoon.
After most people got off, there were about 5 others remaining on board, and we were free to move about the cabin. We were able to use the bathrooms as they cleaned and restocked the plane, but they didn't want us to head into the terminal or change seats to the front row. I chose to move to a different row a bit further up the front into 19A giving me this great view just over the wing.
Cabin pressure should want to curve where oxygen mask will drop from the compartment overhead. Reach out, pull down firmly on the mask.
Even though we arrived into New Orleans pretty much on time, we still departed about another 30 minutes late, as there were some troubles during boarding, particularly because flights like this to Orlando often feature a lot of families and children who can understandably take a little bit longer to get settled. This flight wasn't as full as the first one, so I was lucky enough to score an empty middle seat, which made this flight quite comfortable, as I could fully stretch out without having things in the seat pocket or at my feet. The seat behind me was also free, so I was able to recline on this flight too. We were only given one snack on this flight, plus the usual drink service too, which was fine for this shorter hop though. Unfortunately, one thing about the plane evident in both seats was just how worn some parts of the cabin were, with things like these little signs missing, or these very dirty window shades, or air vents too. But there was no need to shut the windows anyway, as we had this great sunset outside. And there were some funky colours inside the cabin too, with this mood lighting turned on. After a short flight to Orlando, our journey of over 6 hours with Southwest is finally coming to a close. Welcome to Orlando. Overall, that was an alright flight with Southwest. It was a bit disappointing to end up in the C boarding group and the last row of seats. And it was surprising to see how dirty some of the plane was though. However, the rest of the seats were quite comfortable, and the snacks and drinks were fine for each of the flights. But together for a long journey like this, it would have been nice to be able to buy extra food, or even just get off the plane in New Orleans. But the transfer, or almost lack of transfer at our stop, was actually quite a seamless experience, and to be able to move around the cabin and change seats during the layover was nice even though we couldn't leave. Southwest even sells some 2-stop no-change itineraries, but I definitely think 1 stop is probably my limit unless I'm well prepared for a long journey on board.